The cold hit Jake Harrison like a wall of ice as the cryopod opened with a soft hiss. His eyes opened slowly, and bright white light filled his vision. Everything felt wrong. His body was stiff, and his mind was foggy. The last thing he remembered was the sound of enemy ships firing at them and the taste of fear in his mouth. "General Harrison, can you hear me?" A woman's voice came from somewhere above him. Jake tried to speak, but only made a rough sound. His throat felt like sandpaper. "Take it easy, sir. You have been asleep for 15 years. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Lisa Park, his aide. She looked older now, with lines around her eyes that had not been there before. "Here, drink this." Slowly, Jake took small sips of water and felt his throat start to work again. He tried to sit up, but his muscles would not listen to him properly. "What happened? Where are we? Did we lose?" Lisa looked at him with a strange expression on her face. "Sir, that's what we need to talk to you about. Dr. Cross needs to check you first, then we will explain everything." Dr. Alan Cross appeared, next to the cryopod with his medical scanner. He was a thin man with gray hair, who had always been calm during the worst battles. "Your body is responding well, General. All your signs look good. The cryosleep worked perfectly." Jake felt confused and scared. "Alan, tell me what happened. Are we prisoners? Did the Zephyrians win?" Dr. Cross and Lisa looked at each other. "General, the war is over," Dr. Cross said carefully. "It ended 3 hours ago." Jake stared at them. 3 hours ago? How is that possible? I just went into cryo-sleep. The enemy had us surrounded. We were about to lose everything. "Sir, you need to understand something very strange happened," Lisa said. She helped him sit up on the edge of the cryopod. "The Zephyrian fleet surrendered the moment our ship came out of hyperspace. They did not fire a single shot." Jake's head was spinning. Nothing made sense. Surrendered? Why would they surrender? They had 10,000 ships. We only had a few. 100 left. Captain Roy Bennett walked into the medical bay. He was a big man with a beard who had served with Jake for 20 years. His face looked shocked and happy at the same time. "Jake, good to see you awake. I know this is hard to believe, but Lisa is telling the truth. Roy, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old," Jake said. His voice was getting stronger. "What happened while I was asleep?" Roy pulled up a chair and sat down. "When you went into cryo-sleep, we were losing badly. But something changed. The enemy started acting strange. They began making mistakes. They would not attack when they should have. They seemed scared of something." "Scared of what?" "Of you, Jake. They were scared of you." Jake laughed, but it sounded hollow. "That makes no sense. I was asleep. How could I scare anyone while I was frozen?" Admiral Kate Morgan entered the room. She was a tough woman who never showed fear, but her eyes looked amazed. "General, we have been monitoring enemy communications for years. They call you something in their language. It means the sleeping death, or something like that. The sleeping death." Jake felt like he was in a dream. "Kate, I was just sleeping. I was not doing anything." Colonel Pete Davis came in behind Kate. He looked tired but excited. "Sir, they think you were planning something while you slept. They think you spent 15 years figuring out how to destroy them." Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but they held him. "This is crazy. I was not planning anything. I was just frozen." "We know that," Lisa said. "But they do not know that. They think humans can think and plan even while in cryo-sleep. They think you are having strategic dreams or something." Dr. Cross handed Jake some clothes. "General, while you were asleep, our forces won several small battles. Nothing big, just lucky hits here and there. But the enemy started seeing patterns. They thought you were controlling everything from your cryopod. Jake put on his uniform slowly. It felt strange after 15 years. So they were afraid of a sleeping man? Not just afraid, Roy said, terrified. Their whole war council spent years trying to figure out what you would do when you woke up. They drove themselves crazy thinking about it. Kate showed Jake a data pad with enemy communications. Look at this, Jake. These are messages between their commanders. They talk about you like you are some kind of monster who can fight wars in his sleep. Jake read the translated messages. The alien words were full of fear and respect. They spoke of him like he was not human at all, but something much more dangerous. 3 hours ago, when our ship's sensors detected that your cryopod was starting. The wake-up process, the enemy fleet received the signal, Pete explained. Within minutes, they were sending surrender messages on all frequencies. Just like that? Jake asked. Just like that, Lisa confirmed. No fighting, no negotiation, complete surrender. They want to meet with you as soon as possible to discuss peace terms. Jake walked to the window and looked out at space. He could see the massive Zephyrian fleet in the distance. Thousands of ships that should have been shooting at them were just floating there, waiting. So let me understand this, Jake said slowly. I went to sleep during our worst defeat. I woke up during our greatest victory. And I did nothing except sleep. That is exactly right, Roy said. Jake turned back to his officers. These people had fought a war for 15 years while he slept. They looked older and tired, but they were alive. And somehow they had won. Well, Jake said with a smile, I guess I better go meet with these aliens and find out what they think I did while I was dreaming. Jake walked to the bridge of the U.S. Liberty with unsteady steps. His body was still weak from the long sleep, but his mind was starting to work better. The bridge looked different than he remembered. New equipment everywhere, and faces he did not recognize. General on the bridge, someone called out. All the crew members stood up and saluted. Jake felt strange seeing people who had been fighting a war while he slept peacefully. Intelligence officer Maya Chun approached him with a datapad in her hands. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had always been good at finding secrets. General Harrison, I have something you need to see. We have been listening to enemy communications for years. Maya led him to a large screen that showed alien text with human translations below. These are messages between Zephyrian fleet commanders from the past 5 years. Look at what they call you. Jake read the words on the screen. The translations were rough, but the meaning was clear. The dreaming destroyer, the one who plans in sleep, the human who dreams of death. They really think I was doing something while I was frozen? Jake asked. More than that, sir, Maya said. They think you chose to go into cryo-sleep as part of your plan. They believe you wanted to hibernate so you could think without any distractions. Communications specialist Nick Foster joined them. At the screen. He was young, probably started serving while Jake was asleep. General, we have hours of recorded enemy transmissions. They are all about you. Nick played an audio file. Strange alien voices spoke in their clicking language, but the computer translated their words into English. Jake listened to Zephyrian commanders talking to their fleets. The human general sleeps, but his mind walks in the dream realm, one voice said. He sees all possible futures. He knows how we will move before we know it ourselves. Another voice replied, My scouts report his ship remains dark and quiet, but our defeats grow worse each month. He must be sending his plans to his followers through the dream paths. Jake looked at Nick with confusion. Dream paths? What are they talking about? Maya pulled up another file. Sir, the Zephyrians have a very different culture than humans. They believe sleep is when the mind travels to other worlds. They think dreams are real places where you can gain knowledge and power. So they think I was visiting dream worlds to learn how to beat them? Exactly, Nick said. And every time our forces won a battle while you were asleep, they saw it as proof that you were controlling everything from your dream state. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stone approached the group. She had been Jake's tactical advisor before he went into cryo-sleep, but now she wore the rank of a full commander. General, I need to show you something that might explain their fear. Amy brought up a tactical display showing battle reports from the past 15 years. Look at these patterns, sir. Do you see anything familiar? Jake studied the data. Human victories were small, but they followed certain patterns. Surprise attacks on supply lines, ambushes at jump points, defensive positions that forced the enemy to attack uphill. These look like tactics from my old training manuals, Jake said slowly. That is exactly what they are, Amy confirmed. The officers you trained have been using your methods. But the Zephyrians think these tactics are too perfect, too coordinated. They believe you must be sending detailed plans to your students through some kind of dream communication. Nick played another recording. This time it was a high-ranking Zephyrian admiral speaking to what sounded like their war council. The sleeping human has corrupted the minds of his followers, the admiral said. They fight like one person with many bodies. No human commander should be able to coordinate attacks across 50 star systems while he sleeps. It is not natural. Jake sat down in his command chair. It felt familiar, like coming home after a long trip. So they think I am some kind of supernatural being? Maya nodded. The more our forces won using your tactics, the more convinced they became that you are not really asleep. They started calling your cryopod the Dreaming Throne, and your ship the Palace of the Sleeping Death. Amy brought up more battle reports. General, some of these victories happened because the enemy made terrible mistakes. They would retreat when they should have attacked. They would send small forces when they needed large ones. They were so busy trying to figure out your imaginary plan that they forgot how to fight properly. Show me the worst example, Jake said. Amy pulled up a battle report from 2 years ago. The Battle of Kepler Station. The enemy had us outnumbered 10-1. Our commander, Captain Bill Turner, was about to surrender. Then the Zephyrian fleet just stopped attacking and pulled back. Why did they stop? Nick found the enemy communication from that battle. Listen to this, sir. The alien voice sounded panicked. The human ships are positioning exactly as the Sleeping Death would want. This is a trap. He wants us to attack the station so he can spring his real plan. All ships retreat immediately. Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. What was? The real plan? There was no plan, Amy said. Captain Turner was just trying to protect the civilians on the station. He put his ships between the enemy and the station because it was the right thing to do. But the enemy saw it as the perfect tactical setup and got scared. Maya showed him more files. Sir, this pattern repeated dozens of times. Our commanders would do something normal, something you might have taught them years ago. The enemy would see it as part of your master plan and make mistakes because they were afraid. Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. In the distance, he could see the massive Zephyrian fleet. Thousands of ships that could destroy his small human fleet in minutes, all waiting quietly because they were afraid of one sleeping. Man, how long have they been planning for my wake up? He asked. Nick checked his files. According to our intelligence, their entire war strategy for the past 3 years has been focused on what to do when you wake up. They have been preparing for every possible thing you might do. Everything except surrender without a fight, Amy added. Jake turned back to his officers. So they spent so much time being afraid of me that they forgot they could just attack. And win? That appears to be the case, sir. Maya confirmed. Jake looked at the enemy fleet again. In his wildest dreams, he never could have planned something like this. The enemy had defeated themselves with their own fear and imagination. Well, Jake said quietly. I guess I better figure out how to be the monster they think I am. Jake spent the next few hours learning about the war he had missed. Chief Engineer Dan Wright brought him reports about the battles that happened while he slept. Dan was an old friend who had served with Jake for many years before the cryo sleep. Ugh. Strange thing is, Jake, we are not really winning, Dan said as they walked through the ship's corridors. We were just not losing as badly as we should have been. What do you mean? Jake asked. Dan showed him a datapad with battle statistics. Look at these numbers. In most fights, we were still outnumbered. We still lost more ships than they did. But somehow, we kept surviving when we should have been wiped out. They stopped at an observation deck where Jake could see the Zephyrian fleet in the distance. The alien ships looked like giant insects floating in space, dark and threatening. But they were not moving toward the human fleet. They were just waiting. Dan, tell me about the battles our people won. The real victories, not just the times we survived. Dan pulled up different files. There were not many real victories, Jake. Maybe a dozen major wins in 15 years. But every single one happened the same way. How? The enemy would be winning. Then they would suddenly make a mistake. A big, stupid mistake that cost them the battle. Jake thought about what Maya and Nick had told him on the bridge. They were making mistakes because they were afraid of me? That is what we think now, Dan said. But at the time, our commanders thought they were just getting lucky. They walked to the ship's main conference room. Inside, Jake found several officers waiting for him. Some he recognized from before his cryosleep, but many were new faces. Commander Helen Burke stood up when Jake entered. She had been a young lieutenant when he went to sleep, but now she wore the uniform of a senior officer. General Harrison, it is good to see you awake, sir. Helen, I heard you have been leading ground forces. Tell me what happened down there. Helen activated a holographic display showing planetary battles. Sir, I have to admit something. When I was fighting on the planets, I kept thinking about what you would do. I used the tactics you taught me in training. That is what good officers do, Jake said. You use what you learned. But, sir, the enemy reacted like they knew exactly what tactics I would use. They would prepare for the wrong things. They would defend against attacks I was not planning. They would leave important positions unguarded because they expected me to attack somewhere else. Jake studied the battle maps. Show me an example. Helen brought up the Battle of New Terra. Here, sir. I had 500 soldiers. The enemy had 5,000. I was planning a simple night raid on their supply depot. Nothing fancy, just hit and run. What happened? The enemy pulled most of their forces away from the depot. They set up ambushes along 3 different routes that I was not even planning. To use, they left the depot almost unguarded because they were sure I was going to attack their command center instead. Jake frowned. Why did they think you would attack the command center? Because that is what you did at the Battle of Rigel 7, 20 years ago. They had studied all your old battles, sir. They thought I would copy your most famous tactics. Doctor Rachel Torres, the fleet's expert on alien psychology, joined the conversation. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair who had spent years studying how different species think. General Harrison, I have been analyzing Zephyrian behavior patterns, Dr. Torres said. Their culture is very different from ours. They believe that great warriors can share knowledge through spiritual connections. Spiritual connections? They think that when a master teaches a student, part of the master's soul goes into the student. So when your former students won battles using your tactics, the Zephyrians thought you were literally inside their minds, guiding them. Jake sat down at the conference table. So every time Helen or any other officer used something I taught, them, the enemy thought I was controlling them from my cryopod? Exactly, Dr. Torres confirmed. And the more victories your students won, the more convinced the enemy became that you had supernatural powers. Admiral Sam Mitchell entered the room. He was an older man who had been fighting the war while Jake slept. "General, I need to tell you about something that happened 6 months ago. It might explain why they were so ready to surrender today." "What happened?" Sam activated another display. "We were losing a major battle near the Centauri system. I was about to order a retreat when the enemy fleet suddenly stopped attacking and pulled back." "They just stopped?" "Yes, sir. We intercepted their communications afterward. Their admiral was convinced that your cryopod had somehow detected the battle and was sending you strategic information through dreams." Jake looked confused. How could they think that? Dr. Torres answered, "Sir, your cryopod is connected to the ship's computer systems for medical monitoring. The Zephyrians detected those signals and thought they were some kind of advanced communication system. They thought my medical sensors were battle computers?" "More than that," Sam said. "They thought your sleeping brain was connected to every human ship in the fleet. They believed you were processing information from hundreds of battles at once and sending tactical updates to all our commanders." Helen brought up more battle reports. "General, once we realized what was happening, some of our commanders started using it to their advantage. They would deliberately use your old tactics because they knew it would scare the enemy." "Did that work?" "Too well, sir. The enemy became so paranoid that they started seeing your influence in everything. If a human ship turned left instead of right, they thought it was part of your master plan." Captain Claire Adams, who commanded the reconnaissance fleet, spoke up. "Sir, we have been monitoring Zephyrian communications for months. Their war council meets every day to discuss what you might do when you wake up. They have thousands of different theories about your plans." "Thousands?" "Yes, sir. They think you might attack their whole world, or you might try to capture their emperor, or you might use some kind of dream weapon to drive their warriors insane. They have been preparing for every possible thing except the one thing that actually happened." "Which was?" "Nothing, sir. You did absolutely nothing except sleep. But they were so busy preparing for your imaginary plans that they forgot to just fight the war normally." Jake stood up and walked to the window again. The Zephyrian fleet was still waiting out there, thousands of ships afraid of one man who had been asleep for 15 years. "So they defeated themselves," Jake said quietly. "Yes, sir," Helen confirmed. "They were so afraid of what you might do that they never realized you are not doing anything at all." Jake turned back to his officers. "And now they want to surrender to me personally?" "They insist on it, sir," Sam said. "They will only negotiate with the dreaming destroyer himself." Jake smiled for the first time since waking up. "Then I guess I better give them what they expect." Jake returned to his quarters to prepare for the meeting with the Zephyrian leaders. Dr. Rachel Torres followed him to explain more about the alien culture and how their minds worked. "General, you need to understand how different they are from U.S., Dr. Torres said, as Jake looked through his old uniforms. "The Zephyrians believe that sleep is the most important time in a person's life." "Why is sleep so important to them?" Jake asked, choosing his most formal military jacket. "In their culture, when someone sleeps, their spirit leaves their body and travels to other worlds. They think dreams are real places where you can learn secrets and gain power," Dr. Torres explained. "The longer someone sleeps, the more powerful they become." Jake stopped getting dressed. "So when I slept for 15 years, they thought I was becoming super powerful?" "Exactly. To them, you are not just sleeping. You are training in the spirit world, learning how to defeat them from the masters of war who live in the dream realm." A message came through the ship's communication system. It was Admiral Sam Mitchell calling from the bridge. "General Harrison, the Zephyrian delegation is ready to meet. They are sending a small ship to dock with us." Jake finished putting on his uniform, and walked back to the bridge with Dr. Torres. When he arrived, he could see a strange alien ship approaching. It looked like a giant flower made of metal, with petals that opened and closed as it moved. "Sir, they are requesting permission to come aboard," Communications Officer Nick Foster reported. "But they want to follow some kind of ceremony." "What kind of ceremony?" Jake asked. Dr. Torres checked her notes about Zephyrian customs. "They probably want to perform a ritual to protect themselves from your dream powers. They think you might be able to enter their minds and control them." Jake almost laughed. "They are afraid I will control their thoughts?" "Yes, sir. They believe that someone who has mastered dream combat can invade other people's sleep and drive them insane." The alien ship docked with the UES Liberty. Jake watched on the security monitors as strange creatures in flowing robes walked through the airlock. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin humans, but with gray skin and large black eyes. They moved slowly and carefully, like they were walking through a dangerous place. Lieutenant Lisa Park met the aliens at the airlock and escorted them to the main conference room. Jake watched them on the monitors and noticed something strange. The Zephyrians kept looking around nervously, like they expected something terrible to happen at any moment. "They are scared," Jake said. "Terrified," Dr. Torres confirmed. "Look at their body language. They think they are walking into the den of a monster." Jake and his senior officers went to the conference room. When Jake entered, all the Zephyrians immediately dropped to the floor in what looked like a bowing position. They stayed down for several long seconds before slowly standing up. The leader of the Zephyrian group was taller than the others and wore more decorative robes. When he spoke, a translation device turned his clicking sounds into English words. "Great dreaming destroyer, we come before you in humble surrender. We beg you to show mercy to our people." Jake tried to keep his face serious, but inside he felt amazed. These aliens were treating him like he was some kind of god. "I will listen to what you have to say." The Zephyrian leader seemed surprised that Jake had spoken normally. "Honored one, we expected you to speak in the dream language. We brought interpreters who can understand spirit words." Dr. Torres whispered to Jake. "They thought you would speak in some kind of magical language." Jake decided to play along. "I choose to speak in your simple words so that you can understand me clearly." The aliens looked at each other with what seemed like relief. The leader continued, "Great one, our war council has studied your tactics for many years. We know that you have been planning our defeat since the day you entered the sacred sleep." "Tell me what you think I planned," Jake said, trying to sound mysterious. The Zephyrian pulled out a device that projected holographic images in the air. "You chose your students carefully before you slept. You placed part of your spirit in each of them. Then you guided them from the dream world, making them fight as one mind with many bodies." Jake watched as the hologram showed human ships moving in coordinated attacks. The aliens had drawn lines connecting all the human forces, showing what they thought was Jake's spiritual control network. "You made us see patterns that were not there," the alien continued. "You made us prepare for attacks that never came. You filled our dreams with false visions that made our commanders make mistakes." Admiral Sam Mitchell leaned forward. "You think General Harrison was giving you bad dreams?" "Not just bad dreams," the Zephyrian said. "He was invading our sleep and planting false tactical information in our minds. Our admirals would wake up convinced they knew the human plan, but the information was wrong. It led us into traps that did not exist." Jake began to understand. The enemy commanders had been having dreams about human battle plans. They thought the dreams were real intelligence, so they prepared for the wrong things. When their preparations failed, they thought Jake had outsmarted them again. "How long have your people been having these dreams?" Jake asked. "Since the 3rd year of your sacred sleep, Great One," our wisest generals began receiving visions of your strategies. They thought the dreams were gifts from our war gods, showing them how to defeat you. But every vision led to defeat. Dr. Torres made a small sound of understanding. She whispered to Jake. Their own anxiety about you was giving them nightmares. They were dreaming about battles because they were worried about battles. Then they thought the dreams were real intelligence from you. The Zephyrian leader activated another hologram. Great dreaming destroyer, we know you can see all possible futures. We know you chose the future where we surrender without fighting. We accept this fate. Why do you think I chose this future? Jake asked. Because it proves your ultimate power. You defeated the greatest war fleet in galactic history without firing a single shot. You turned our strength into weakness using only the power of dreams. No warrior in history has achieved such a victory. Jake looked around at his officers. They all seemed amazed by what they were hearing. The enemy had convinced themselves that losing without a fight was actually proof of Jake's incredible abilities. Our Emperor has ordered all our fleets to surrender, the Zephyrian continued. We will accept any terms you offer. We only ask that you do not curse our people with permanent nightmares. Jake almost smiled. I will consider your request. The alien looked relieved. Thank you, Great One. When will you announce the terms of our surrender? Jake thought for a moment. He was starting to enjoy this role. I will announce my terms when I choose to announce them. Until then, your fleets will wait. Yes, great dreaming destroyer. We will wait as long as you command. As the Zephyrian delegation left the room, Jake turned to his officers. They really think I planned all of this? They are completely convinced, sir, Dr. Torres said. In their minds, you are the greatest military genius in galactic history. Jake walked to the window and looked out at the enemy fleet again. Thousands of ships waiting for orders from a man who had been asleep during their entire defeat. Maybe, Jake said quietly, being a legend is better than being a general. Jake stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. The meeting with the Zephyrians had ended hours ago, but he was still thinking about everything they had said. These aliens truly believed he was some kind of supernatural warrior who could fight battles in his dreams. A soft knock came at his door. Come in, Jake said. Commander Tim Walsh entered the room. Tim had been Jake's closest friend for 30 years, even before the war started. He was one of the few people who could speak honestly to Jake without worrying about military rank. So Jake, how does it feel to be a living legend? Tim asked with a small smile. Strange, Jake admitted. I went to sleep as a general who was losing a war. I woke up as some kind of mythical figure who won it without fighting. Tim sat down in a chair near the window. The crew is talking about you differently now. Before, they respected you as a good commander. Now they look at you like you planned this whole thing. Did I plan it? Jake asked. Sometimes I wonder if I knew this would happen somehow. Come on, Jake. You know you were just sleeping. You did not plan anything. Jake turned away from the window. But maybe that is the point, Tim. Maybe the best plan is no plan. Maybe the most powerful weapon is the enemy's imagination. Another knock came at the door. This time it was Jake's daughter, Lieutenant Julie Harrison. She had been a child when Jake went into cryosleep, but now she was a grown woman and a skilled officer. Dad, I wanted to talk to you, Julie said as she entered. Jake felt a strange mix of pride and sadness looking at her. He had missed 15 years of her life, but she had grown into a strong person without him. Julie, I am sorry I was not there while you grew up. Dad, you were there. Every time I made a decision, I thought about what you would do. Every time I faced a problem, I remembered something you taught me when I was little. You were guiding me even while you slept. Jake realized something important. So the Zephyrians were right in a way. I was influencing the war through my students, through my daughter, through everyone I had trained. Not with magic or dreams, but with the lessons. I taught before I slept. Tim nodded. That is what real leadership is, Jake. You do not have to be awake to lead people. You just have to teach them well enough that they can think like you when you are not there. Admiral Sam Mitchell's voice came through the communication system. General Harrison, please report to the bridge. We have incoming messages from several Zephyrian worlds. Jake, Tim, and Julie went to the bridge together. When they arrived, they found the crew gathered around the main communication console. Nick Foster was monitoring multiple alien transmissions. Sir, we are receiving surrender messages from every Zephyrian planet in their empire, Nick reported. They are not just ending the war. They want to join the human alliance. Join us? Jake asked, surprised. Dr. Rachel Torres looked up from her analysis station. General, it appears that word of your victory has spread throughout their empire. They see humans as the ultimate warriors now. They want to learn from us. Maya Chun brought up a holographic display showing the Zephyrian territory. Sir, there. Entire civilization is changing. They are calling this the Great Awakening, in honor of your awakening from cryosleep. Jake studied the display. The Zephyrian Empire was huge, with hundreds of worlds and billions of people. They want to change their whole civilization because of me? Because of what they think you represent, Dr. Torres corrected. To them, you prove that humans can transcend physical limitations. They believe we can fight wars with pure thought and win battles with dreams. Captain Roy Bennett approached Jake. Sir, we need to decide how to handle this. Do we tell them the truth about what really happened, or do we let them keep believing in the legend? Jake thought about the question carefully. If he told the truth, the Zephyrians would learn that their defeat was based on their own fears and mistakes. They might become angry or try to start the war again. But if he kept the legend alive, peace would continue. What would happen if I told them I was just sleeping normally? Jake asked Dr. Torres. It would probably destroy their new respect for humanity. They might even feel embarrassed enough to become hostile again. The truth could restart the war we just ended. Julie spoke. Dad, does it matter if the story is true? The result is still the same. The war is over. People are alive who would have died. Peace is better than truth if truth brings more fighting. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. He looked out at the Zephyrian fleet, still waiting quietly for his orders. These aliens had defeated themselves with their own imagination. But now that same imagination was creating peace. Open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels and worlds. Jake commanded. Nick activated the communication system. Channel open, sir. You are broadcasting to their entire empire. Jake took a deep breath. He had to decide whether to be Jake Harrison, the regular general, or Jake Harrison, the dreaming destroyer. People of the Zephyrian Empire, Jake began. I have awakened from my long sleep, and I have seen the future. In this future, our peoples do not fight each other. Instead, we work together to build something better than either of us could create alone. He paused, letting his words be translated into their language. You have shown wisdom by ending this war. You understood that some battles are won not by fighting, but by choosing not to fight. This is the greatest victory of all. The response from the Zephyrian fleet was immediate. Messages of gratitude and respect flooded the communication channels. Jake continued his broadcast. I will return to my rest soon, but not to sleep. I will rest because there is no more war to fight. Peace is the greatest dream of all, and it is now our reality. When Jake ended the transmission, the bridge was quiet. His officers looked at him with a mixture of admiration and amazement. Sir, Tim said quietly, you just created a legend that might keep peace for generations. Jake smiled. Sometimes the best strategy is to let people believe what they want to believe, especially if what they believe brings peace. Dr. Torres checked her readings from the Zephyrian communications. Sir, they are already calling this the dream of peace speech. They think you just shared a vision from the spirit world with them. Jake stood up from his command chair. Maybe I did. Maybe the best dreams are the ones that come true. As Jake left the bridge, he knew he would probably have to play the role of the dreaming destroyer for the rest of his life. But if that role brought peace to the galaxy, it was a small price to pay. The war that had lasted decades was over. It ended not with weapons or tactics, but with the power of fear, imagination, and finally, hope. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from the battles you fight, but from the battles you convince your enemies they cannot win. And sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply being the person others believe you to be.